Hello and greetings from Iceland. Let's start with some snow before I turn up the heat, because we have plenty of it. In my last update, I mentioned that it wouldn't be a surprise if we might be moving into a chapter of increased seismic activity, and that is exactly what happened just a few hours later after that upload. And it was yet another offshore chapter, the fourth in 1 year. And since the interval between such chapters is very short now, I wanted to make a new earthquake time-lapse video, or until I discovered that the Met Office hasn't transferred the old data to the new website. So I had to browse through some old folders where I came up with this time-lapse that I made a while back. It covers the big picture before the first eruption in 2021, and the time-lapse starts in January 2020 and runs until the first eruption starts. And although the resolution isn't great, the message is clear. And the Reykjanes Ridge was a big player during the run-up to the 2021 eruption and onwards. It was a video topic numerous times because, like now, I'm wondering about the connection between the offshore activity and the activity on the Reykjanes Peninsula, which is, by the way, just a part of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, the part of it that happens to be above sea level. And it is a well-established fact that the peninsula has been dormant for 800 years. The last known eruptive period, known as Reykjanes fires, occurred roughly between 1210 and 1240 AD. But that goes for the peninsula alone, since the science community draws a line here on the coast for some reason. So it is appropriate to note that the offshore volcanism has a separate and way younger story. And if the Reykjanes Ridge would be categorized with the Reykjanes Peninsula, the interval between volcanic eruptions was less than 50 years when the 2021 eruption started. And I can understand up to some extent why scientists keep the offshore eruptions in a separate category due to their nature, but that line blurs when we look at the 13th century eruption that started offshore and migrated onshore, so it can actually fit into both categories. And I'm now flying over the spot where the eruption migrated and formed a longer row of craters beside an older crater row. And the volcanism on the Reykjanes Ridge is way more frequent than on the peninsula. I'm of course not trying to say that it means anything. I just want to get the statistics straight. And if Iceland will grow in size in the future, this is where I would place my bet. So let's look at what the experts say and the most likely scenarios that might await us. The earthquake swarm that has now faded provided some interesting responses from experts. And first I want to mention the response of the Met Office.
Nothing to see here, please!
And after they described the tectonic plates just rubbing against each other as usual, the Icelandic media kept on asking questions. And they called two of the biggest troublemakers amongst volcanologists, the experts who say what they feel about things. And they often get things right. And often where others don't even dare to say anything. And the research professor Ármann Höskuldsson stated that there is a 50% chance of a volcanic eruption on the seabed, since the nature of the earthquake suggests that we are witnessing a magma intrusion. And he has been saying for a long time that the activity by Grindavik will move westward when Mother Earth has done her job there. So his statement now is not coming out of nowhere. And then we got a comment from Professor Þorvaldur Þórðarson, and he actually gave me the reason to make my first video from here, the tip of the Reykjanes Peninsula, about 4 or 5 years ago, or after he stated that we were likely heading toward an offshore eruption. It could take some time, but that's where we are going. And that is why I have a fairly good collection of stock footage from here. and I feel as I need more, actually. And it looks to me, as Þorvaldur is right about this, the interval between episodes is getting shorter and shorter, so this looks more and more like a part of a larger chain of events or a build-up to something. And if these fine experts are assessing this correctly, we would be talking about 3 types of scenarios, although we could of course get something even stranger, since this is Iceland. The best case scenario is an offshore eruption at such depth that we will hardly notice it, so there is always this chance that this will just turn into nothing. The next scenario would, however, be an offshore eruption at less depth or a large eruption that lasts long enough to build itself up from the seabed to form an island. And such eruptions are extremely explosive. And what worries us the most now is the proximity to the Keflavik International Airport that could easily be affected over longer or shorter periods of unfavorable wind directions. So we are in a highly sensitive situation there, and Iceland needs to be ready for a scenario of that kind. So let's look at how prepared we are. It is a publicly owned company that operates all airports in Iceland, and it has been criticized for a long time for focusing too much on Keflavik International Airport while neglecting other airports in the country. So it has been a huge battle here in the north, in Akureyri, where I am today, to improve the airport here with ILS and a new terminal for international flights. We have that now, but it wasn't easy. And perhaps most importantly, we have now a new parking area for a large fleet of planes, still under construction actually, and it proved to be hugely important when Keflavik Airport closed the other day, or when I shot this. Never seen before traffic on the airport. And it was local politics with pressure from the tourism industry that made this possible. And this is what we might expect every day if and when the next serious offshore eruption occurs close to Keflavik Airport. And I'm not just talking about tourism, I'm talking about import and export, and the DHL and UPS planes, they stop by every day, so it's just so much at stake here. And we can be thankful for the fact that we are now able to handle not all, but some of the problems that would follow the closure of Keflavik Airport. And the worst case scenario we might face is of course a scenario like we experienced during the 13th century, or something similar to the eruption that started offshore and migrated onshore. Eruption like that would not only come with the full S package and the airport problems, it would also threaten infrastructure like the power plant that is by the end of the 13th century Gretiro now. We have also a fish farm there that uses the cooling water from the power plant because the energy from that wastewater is very valuable in that business, and there are plans underway to build yet another fish farm there, although it doesn't sound very clever to me. And we actually know quite a bit about the last episode around here. It was nasty. It wiped out all the livestock on the peninsula. So we know that ashfall could be significant. It would also be a problem in Reykjavik. It could reduce outdoor activities for years and cause significant health issues because volcanic ash would be blowing back and forth for years. So it would be very nasty to get a large eruption there that would turn explosive. We are, however, talking about a very wide range of scenarios, ranging from no effects to almost uninhabitable Reykjanes Peninsula. And 70% of the population of Iceland lives within the affected area. And the worst case scenario package is a package similar to what hit us during the 13th century. We don't have to go further back to find a disastrous outcome. So this could mean problems. However, there is No reason to make this into a drama until it becomes a drama. It could take decades before any offshore scenario starts, although it has been brewing for so long that it could just as well start tonight. But at least I can say there is never a dull moment in Iceland. And I have the feeling that my next update will not be about the potential offshore eruption. I suspect it might be Bárðarbunga volcano, or maybe even Katla volcano. But as usual, it's impossible to say. And with that, I'm sending you best regards from the volcano island, Iceland.